The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar entitled ITIL Needs Some Help. I want to point out up front that today's webinar is being recorded. The recording will be shared with you via email sometime in the near future and will also be posted to our website, fruitionpartners.com. So let's jump right into it. Here's a look at today's presenters. We're excited to have Paul from NextThink with us today, along with Phil from Fruition Partners. Both have an abundance of knowledge when it comes to NextThink and service management, so we're all in for a real treat today. Phil, if I could just have you say hello real quick.
Yeah, hi guys.
Great, thanks Phil. Paul, if you could do the same.
Hello everyone.
Great, thanks Paul. So when it comes to webinar participation, we want you to be active. So if a question comes to mind, go ahead and enter it in the question box in the GoToWebinar panel. I will do my best to pose it to our presenters at the right time. You can also tweet at us using the hashtags up on the screen as well. That's definitely handy if a question comes to mind following the webinar. Please note that we do have 2 poll questions today, so be on the lookout for that poll icon on the coming slides. The polls are a great way to see where you stack up against your peers. So if this is your first Fruition Partners webinar, here's a nice overview of who we are and what we do. I won't spend too much time with this, but it's worth mentioning that Fruition Partners is a one-stop shop for cloud service management. We started 18 years ago as an advisory company that consulted leaders on how to best approach service management, ITM, GRC, from a practical process design perspective. We became partners with ServiceNow over 6 years ago. So since that time, we've certainly scaled to provide the ServiceNow customer base with process guidance and solutions to maximize their platform investment. As a result of that, we are now the only master solutions partner in both the US and UK to work exclusively with the ServiceNow platform. This expertise extends globally as we've branched out from our Chicago headquarters in recent years to give the international ServiceNow community better access to services and education. Even with this recent expansion and increase in customer projects, we've been able to maintain the highest customer satisfaction score among all ServiceNow partners, which we believe reflects our all-in commitment to not only ServiceNow, but the customer as well. So what's driving customers to Fruition Partners? Other than being a master solutions partner with a dedicated focus on service management processes and ServiceNow technology, we think customers come to us for our unique customer experience. Our Partners on a Journey approach emphasizes transform, operate, innovate to eliminate re-implementation cycles and facilitate organizational maturity and adoption. Each of these stages offers exclusive opportunities and support that no other ServiceNow partner can match, as seen by the numbers on the screen. So that's Fruition Partners in a nutshell. Let's have a look at today's agenda before Paul kicks things off. So again, here's just a really quick glimpse of how we expect the conversation to flow today. I definitely want to point out that NextThink demo, which is about the middle point of that bulleted list. Paul will be doing a great walkthrough of the NextThink solution, so I definitely encourage you to stick around for that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the presentation off to Paul. Thanks, Paul.
My pleasure. All right, just confirm for me that you can see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, Mike. Again, it's a real pleasure for us to kind of share our story Um, Today, I'm going to explain, why you need to change your ITIL process in order to, make a difference. Well, when I talk to customers, they say they can't make things better because, users don't report issues. They have no way of detecting problems that their end users are experiencing. So maybe the back-end systems, they can detect issues there, but end users are still having, pretty significant challenges. And the reason they need to make adjustments to ITIL is that, really the entry point for any of the process models is the end user. In other words, ITIL depends on end users to report incidents and also to confirm resolution. So we're going to do a quick poll or survey here. What percentage of end users report incidents? So if you take a few moments here, I think it'll take a couple of seconds.
Yep.
Give you time.
Thanks for setting that up, Paul.
Let me know when you have some results that you're happy with, and we'll proceed on.
Sure. So for the folks who might not have a visual, who may just be connected via audio, again, the poll question is, what percent of end users report incidents? And the available choices are 0 to 25%, 25 to 50%, 50 to 75%, 75 to 100%, and then I don't know as well. So we'll give everybody about 5 more seconds here, then we'll close the poll and share the results with you momentarily. So I will close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Great.
Right.
Okay, so I'm sharing with you an excerpt from a presentation that was given at Analytics 15 by Getronics. Maybe just as a little bit of background, Getronics agreed to do a pilot with NextSync to see whether or not our technology could, make a difference in the life of their business in terms of the relationship that they have with their outsourced customers. And the reason we refer to this is that they took great care in measuring everything to determine whether or not NextSync could provide an ROI to their business as well as to the customer's business. I'm going to start by saying that maybe the best way to say it is that we advised and agreed that there should be kind of a golden rule here, and that golden rule is don't change anything, right? So they left all of their processes that they had in place alone, and they took a strictly additive type of approach, right, which was to add NextSync. So as you can see here in the top, which is the old process that continues to even to this day, is that they do detection. They look at trend analysis, 6-month trend analysis as a way of indicating that they have issues. Of course, there are problems that get reported and client requests and complaints that can accelerate that. Then they do their normal work through, and then they are monitoring then the incidents, again, looking at what people are reporting to verify whether there's any reoccurrence that's going on. The line below that is this new model where NextSync is detecting issues through our service technology. Then they can do a proactive investigation and kind of identify where the issue is, fix it, and then again, instead of looking at incidents, they're actually monitoring the systems that are in the environment to verify that there's no reoccurrence. So the key point for you to understand is in the top line, here we are, using a standard process. People call, we fix things, we resolve issues. In the bottom line, there's no interaction or dependence on the end user. So this gives you, in particular, the opportunity to kind of control your destiny. You don't require the end user to make sure that things are working properly. So we asked you a survey question. What percentage of your end users? Here is an example that came from the study, And what's significant about this is that you know only 4 people reported that they were having this incident, but the actual number of users that were impacted at that particular time was 18 times higher. In other words, there were 68 end users that were having this issue. And that's interesting in and of itself, but here's the real kicker. Through Nextink, they were able to understand that 3,266 additional users, they say, may experience this problem, but likely would experience this problem in the future. Right? So you can see that there's a really significant gap between what's being reported, what people are actually experiencing the issue, and this is what we see in many of these customer situations, is that there are things that they could be doing proactively. They could fix this issue for a lot of people who are going to see it in the future. So instead of fixing them, one at a time, you could kind of fix it in batch. And as I said, we see this all the time when we do a kind of a proof of concept or a proof of business value with customers. We'll put our analytics engine in, have that run for a couple of months. We'll compare that with 6 months of help desk data, and we'll be able to correlate the two and show that you see here this issue that you fixed 6,000 times over the last, it actually occurred on this date, and these are all the people who were affected, and this is the number of people who still have yet to report this issue because it's not important enough for them yet to report. So the way they presented the results is they identified issues as either being alpha, beta, and gamma. And you see to the left is kind of the old model, and to the right is the new model with Nextink. And alpha would be analogous to like kind of a, maybe let's call it a super incident. Something happens, a lot of people call in, and you can see that red line, it gets to about 50 before they start to make some progress on it and they see some kind of dip. In the new model, they cut that in half. It's about 25, right? And you can see that there really isn't that much of a difference in terms of getting the issues resolved because, again, everyone's reporting it, so, they're responding at roughly about the same time. But these beta issues, which tend to build slowly, right, kind of, based on a trend, there you can see that the incident count gets up to about 38, 35, somewhere in that range, and it takes about a week. But with Nextink, it's, again, cut by 2/3. It's cut in half. Excuse me. It's 5 days, and we're seeing the results at around 15 incidents. So again, another kind of cut in half, right? And then they have these what they call gamma issues, which is kind of like those silent issues, right? These are things that are happening all the time, never rises above the threshold, and therefore never get really, resolved. They're just taken, care of one at a time. Whereas with Nextink, again, we're seeing it, and it's getting resolved again in a very short period of time, less than a week. And then it's important to note that, again, this idea of the threshold, the incident threshold, is in the old model is 25, and in the new model with Nextink, it's 0. Okay, so that's, kind of very low level. What does this really mean? Well, the net result of this was, once they were done with the implementation, is that they had reduced the number of incidents by 28%. And actually, when they compared it year over year, it was 35%. Now, this didn't happen overnight. This was a long effort, concerted effort, with additional resources being brought to bear to do this proactive problem management. But the point is, and I would say to you that the customer, Getronics in particular as well, they said, look, for years we've tried to make adjustments and improvements to our process. We've tried to add new tools and capabilities that could, make a difference, improve the customer's life, if you will, their experience. And say nothing has even come remotely close to what we were able to accomplish with Nexting. So, Mike, maybe you could share with the group here what the survey results were, what percentage of incidents people are reporting.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Seems like a good time. So thanks to the folks who did participate in our first poll. Again, the question was, what percentage of end users report incidents? We had about 60% of you vote, so thank you for participating. And here are the results. 24% said between 0 and 25%. 29% said between 25 and 50%. 35% said between 50 and 75%. 9% said between 75 and 100%, and 3% said, I don't know.
Fair enough.
Right.
All right. Well, here's the challenge that I'll give you all, is that you're going to find that the number of issues that your end users are experiencing will far exceed what they're reporting. That's just, we'll throw it on the gauntlet and make that a challenge. And you'll see why in a moment. All right. So, that's an excerpt from a presentation. What Nexting does is analytics. Some people know what analytics are. Some people say, hey, I'm interested, but I don't really know what it means. What analytics is that it's really the discovery of meaningful patterns in data, right? And the reason people are starting to adopt analytics in major fashion right now is that people just don't have the luxury of time to understand what's going on in their environment, right? So this notion or this concept of using analytics to kind of gather all the data, look for the patterns, identify anomalies is really catching a lot of attention. Forrester wrote an interesting report back in December of 2012 that talked about how complexity continues to increase. Our ability to manually stay on top of things, starts to become, starts to fall behind. It exceeds, and so it's really driving this need for analytics. And for those of you who pay attention to the trends and so forth, you can see that IT operations analytics is this kind of hot new emerging trend that Nexting is a part of. Now, there was another survey done or study done by Forrester, and this is the idea that, okay, you're not alone. 90% of the IT executives in the study said that their end users struggle with business technology problems that they have no way to detect. And they go on to say that what's really driving this is the complexity of their portfolio, right? That they have lots of components to it, and of course they're moving faster and faster. Plus, we can't lock down end user systems like we used to, and we can't limit their choices and prevent them from doing things. So now there's a lot more variability, and there's a lot more things going on. People bringing their own, software service type of cloud services that they're using. So it's getting harder and harder to keep pace with everything that's going on these end devices. So what is Nexting? We're an IT operations analytics solution vendor, but what we do that's different from everybody else, and what garnered us a Gartner Cool Vendor Award in just this past year, is the fact that we do it from the outside in. So most IT organizations today have really big investments in server and network monitoring, and that's really where they spend all of their time, right? We're monitoring the availability of the service, we're monitoring the performance of the service, and if those lights are green, everybody should be happy. Yet there's this disconnect, right? All the major industry analysts kind of say the same thing, that somewhere between 40 as high as 60% of the time end users call in and report issues, the back-end system hasn't reported the problem yet. So the users are experiencing issues before the back-end systems even report these issues. And there are many instances when end users are experiencing issues and the lights are green and there is no perceived issue on the back end, yet the end users are struggling. And so what Nexting provides from the end user monitoring and analytics from the end user. So the software, the collector is running on that end user, and it's looking at all the activity as it's consuming IT services, and provides visualization capabilities, metrics, as well as real-time analytics. And what this gives you is a better, more complete view of the infrastructure from the perspective of your customer, the end user. And it also gives you actionable intelligence, and this can give you some visibility into how to make a better business impact, how to improve your internal processes, and to provide better support to end users and customers. So again, there are lots of solutions, lots of technologies out there to pick from, and what we're showing you here is a selective sample, if you will. But in the IT operations analytics space, where a lot of people have heard of Splunk, a very well executing company, public company, does log analysis and log-based analytics. ExtraHop is somewhat notable in the network arena. And then from the end user space, you have Nexthing, right? And part of our company mantra, to kind of change your perspective, is we're really trying to help people understand that, look, you should really understand how your end users are experiencing the service, rather than just relying exclusively on the performance as reported by the back-end monitoring solutions. So what makes Nexthink unique and interesting? Why did Gartner identify us as a cool vendor in 2014? So our architecture consists of three components. There's a collector, which runs on all the endpoints. It's a passive device driver. There is what we call an analytics engine. This is where all the intelligence, the self-learning, the real-time analytics occur, having real-time state as well as historical information. And then there's the visualization capabilities. So to just give you an idea before we get into a demonstration of the technology, is that by monitoring the end user, we basically put together a timeline, and we have, kind of complete picture, if you want to think of it, a highlight reel of everything that was interesting that's going on from the end user perspective. And so we can see all the issues that they're experiencing. Did this application crash, hang? They got network issues. Are the services they're using working or not? Do they have high threat binaries on their machine? All of those kinds of things. We have a complete picture of this, of every endpoint in the IT infrastructure, which in and of itself is very interesting, but it's not the end of the story, right? So when you do the analytics in real time across the entire enterprise, now you can get insights into service quality as well as infrastructure issues, abnormal behaviors. So you can say that, okay, this particular user's machine is behaving quite differently from everybody else, or everybody in their region, or everybody in their organizational unit. Why is that? Let's go figure that out. And then our visualization technologies expand from not just the timeline and this topological view and this kind of service-centric view. Of course, we have the somewhat traditional real-time trend analysis, where again you can very easily identify anomalies. So with that, let's go and do a demonstration. So that everybody knows what I've got going on here, I'm running on a Mac. I'm running Fusion, and I have two VMs running. I have the engine, and then I have a Windows machine, which is going to display for us the Finder, as well as I'm going to do all the kind of UI elements here. All right, so you have two interfaces, and I'll start by saying that the Finder is the interface for the subject matter expert, right? This interface allows you to, as the name implies, Finder, find stuff that's going on in your environment, and you can pivot on data. You do some really kind of amazing things, which is what I'll show you now. So just to give you an idea of the what's in this engine, what data is represented there, and remember, this is all based on real-time data. So This isn't an inventory scan or anything like this. Is as things are occurring in the environment in real time, that information is reported into the engine, and then the engine produces metrics and produces additional analytics, and you'll see that here momentarily. But just to give you an idea, number of users, number of devices, and everything is just a click away, right? So we've got just 6 Macs. Okay, great. So we know where they are, okay? Same thing with the mobile devices, but 7 just in the last 24 hours. So once again, I can see that. All right. So the idea here, same thing, printers even, right? All the activity, every application execution or binary execution, if you want to think of that, every network connection, the associated failures, how much bandwidth it's taking, did it crash, printing, did the print job work, where is it going, how many pages, duplex, color, all of that stuff, all the activity is being reported and then being analyzed by Nextthink in real time. So let's see. To now take you maybe to something that's a step forward, if you will, is with all the information that's being reported here, we could do this kind of comparative analysis, right? So these are all the machines that are in my environment, and I've got 7 that only have 2. Well, that might be a bit low, right? And so what machines represent this, and here it is. So again, pretty simple stuff. There are many let's say a comparative analysis that you can do here. Let's say average logon time. Oh wow, we got 9 machines that are taking 5 to 10 minutes to log in. I mean, these are things that obviously we should look at. So this is pretty basic stuff. It's kind of getting us going in a good direction. But now let's see what we can do in the form of alerts, right? I've been able to kind of see some things, but Nextthink can be configured to report these alerts. So for example, if people are experiencing blue screens and hard resets and they're not calling you, right, I can see that that machine. Now, to again highlight this for you, this is the timeline I was telling you about, right? For what it's worth, we also give you the kind of display that everybody else gives you, right? Kind of like more this inventory type view, but that's nowhere near as interesting as this timeline, right? So from this timeline, and you can see how it's neatly organized into these sections and so forth, is that we can see that the blue screen and hardware reset occurred here. We can also see here that that they've had some print errors. We can see high CPU type of alerts and so forth. New binaries that have been installed on the machine. The user login connections. Here again, they had kind of an excessive execution with administrator privileges. Likewise, all the network services, whether they're working properly or not. Here's again something that's grabbing my attention is that with this production website, this DMS production website, you can see here that they were having some issues as well. So the point is that when I'm looking at this machine, not only am I kind of seeing what the issue is right now, but I can go back and look in time and see everything that's going on that's related to this machine. So when somebody calls up and says, "Hey, I've got an issue," great. I can objectively now look and see how this is performing and whether or not this is the first occurrence of this issue, or if there are other things that are going on that might be causing this that I don't know. So again, perhaps just to give you another example, there's another alert that's set up here that's identifying dangerous activity that was detected. So here we go. We have some machines that have some that have some activity going on. I can look and see. Let's see. Sorry. I can look for the dangerous binaries on these devices with just a simple one-click investigation. So here I'm pivoting on the data, right? I see some suspicious activity. I can look for dangerous binaries. I can see this one here, which is send me exe. It turns out it is a high threat level. I can look this up also and see, what does virus tell me? Why has this got a high threat level and so forth? And you can read about this and so forth. So again, all the analysts will tell you that, you should protect, but, the protection isn't foolproof anymore. There's way too many threats. There's way too many things going on. And so Nextink can help you identify new malware that's coming into your environment that's somehow beating your security policies and your endpoint security protection mechanisms. All right. So now maybe we'll give you a slightly different view of things. Here we'll take SAP. You see that it's showing me that 48 devices are having issues. The way this is organized is that it's showing me what's happened in the last 24 hours and what's happened in the last 6 minutes, and I can say here, okay, failed web requests. That's gone up substantially, and it's all just occurred here in this time frame here. So everything was fine, but all of a sudden Paris, Zurich, and London is starting to have these issues. All right, so I can get a very clean kind of view here, an at-a-glance view. Remember, this is not coming from the back end. This is all being reported as what the end users are seeing or what they're perceiving, as their IT experience, right? And I can switch to this web view. And so what this is doing is taking all of those elements that were related to that issue, if you will, and it's now showing a topographical analytics view, right? And so what you're seeing here is the devices themselves, the binary that it's running on, the port that it's communicating, the kind of different destination addresses, and then in this particular case, since it's a web view, what's the domain, and look here what I'm seeing, right? In terms of the failed web request. Now, when I highlight this, you can see that this is being, and likewise when I highlight here, you can see the things that are being selected. So clearly, I've got a problem with the proxy in Europe. There seems to be no issue with the proxy in the US. There's no issue with the proxy in the Middle East. And so I don't know what's happened. You're going to have to use your diagnostic tools to kind of figure this out, but we can now report to the IT group that, hey, we need to look at what's going on with the proxy because we're having issues in these regions. To maybe, again, give you a little bit more of a flavor on this is that I could likewise, if I wanted to just see what's going on, I can get a summary view here as well. And then I could just on this interesting population set, I can drill down into that. Again, it's showing me that, okay, now all these are errors. They're all going through the same proxy, and you can see the when this has all occurred. So again, very nice way, and it's this powerful visualization that allows people to understand what's going on. And people tell us this all the time, like, okay, we wouldn't have seen that, or we wouldn't have been able to figure that out with the products and the tools we have today, because again, we don't have anything that gives them the perspective from the end user. All right. Again, I don't want to go too heavy, but I'll give you just a few more things here. Let's see. Investigation. So this was mentioned a little bit earlier. Again, this is called the Finder. So what are you going to find? You can do these investigations. You saw an example of a one-click investigation. And you can import these from the library. So again, if you're looking for, let's say, potentially vulnerable, well, let's see. I'll show you kind of a sample of that. All right. So you can see here the the devices that are vulnerable because they don't have this patch as an example. Now, one thing I want you to notice is that just after running that, now I have that as a recently used investigation, right? Now, these investigations, again, you don't have to build these yourself. We offer a library, so you can see here that I can, like, here's one, the new poodle attack. Um, Here's another one that, here's a pack that can help you discover the use of non-approved software within your organization, kind of the shadow IT. So again, we offer you a library of stuff, and we're always contributing to that, and you can kind of leverage that as you need. Um, let's see. Maybe the next thing I'll share with you is I never clicked here, right? It's like, what are you looking for? And the one very interesting feature or capability of NextThink is the ability to kind of have a smart search. So, if you want to know the state of your Active Directory, it would be helpful if I could spell it. You can see here the ports that are being used. You can see the devices that are being used. And again, you can go into, sorry, I didn't want that one, destinations. This is the one. So again, you can see the devices and the domains that are serving for your Active Directory. So, and then you can also get a web activity view of it, as well as a network activity view. Okay. So you can see what's being used, what's being accessed. All right. Let's see. To maybe give you something else here as an example, USB drive. So, what drivers are out there? Are there any alerts? People doing network access from the USB drive? No, at this point. So we're cool. Another thing to point out to you is that it's not just this particular time. It's I can do it like last hour or today. So let's see, right? So you can bound a request by time. So again, we suggest to you these sample investigations. So much like with Google, you can type in usernames, you can type in devices, you can do various types of searches, including hashes. Your boss comes to you and says, hey, do we have this in our environment? I don't know. Let's go find out. You can do that. As an example again, and just to show you the integration with ServiceNow. Here we'll pick a device. So again, if someone were to report to you and say, hey, we've got issues and so forth, you can again look and see what's going on. You get this kind of complete view, if you will. And then likewise, I can open an instance in ServiceNow. And the integration that we've done, just so that we're really clear on this, is NextThink has developed a sample integration with ServiceNow. We rely on partners like Fruition to actually do the installation and the implementation of it, right? Because NextThink isn't a certified partner, if you will, for doing solution delivery. So. But basically, the way the integration works is that when you're reporting an incident or when somebody's calling up, they can hit a button and we'll pull relevant health information from NextThink into the ServiceNow interface so that your level 1 people, level 1.5 people, it's like totally transparent to them. they get these kind of idiot lights, if you will, that tell them, where there's a possibility of a problem. Like, okay, this is what it looks like at this particular point in time, but what was the issue, or what did it look like the previous week? And from that, you can figure out what's going on. And in this particular case, they've had kind of a long kind of running systemic issue with the PC health. And then your level 2 people or your subject matter experts can leverage this technology and go deeper, right? And one of the real main advantages of this integration is that we take you to the time when the incident is reported or occurred. So when they navigate into Nextink to use this timeline view, we're taking them to the time that the incident occurred. So if they're following up a day later or 2 days later, however long, they can get right to that issue, and then of course they can look and navigate back and forth how they wish. So perhaps that's enough on the Finder. Again, this is the subject matter interface. Now I'm going to take you to the portal, and this is the dashboard, and this is really where everybody can see things quite easily and have some value, or see some value, right? So they don't have to navigate or pivot through the data. So, for example, here I find devices that are running high threat binaries. I can see the machines that are affected. Again, I can get back into this machine view. So again, very simple. Perhaps again, just to give you an idea, we have risk, user experience. We'll talk maybe just a little bit on this in the ITSM space, just to again give you a little bit better view. So this is showing you all the services. Are people experiencing issues? Okay, and looking at the details so I can track it. What issues are they experiencing? So again, a lot of this can be set up and made quite easy for an IT organization to become proactive. So again, the summary for you is Nextink, with this outside-in view, can see all the issues that are occurring in your environment through the combination of these investigations and alerts and dashboards and so forth. You can have a very small, focused team identify the challenges that are going on. It'll help you prioritize things so you become more effective, right? Working on the things that matter most, as well as finding the things that maybe you're not seeing, as well as being more efficient because you're going to have the knowledge of where this issue is occurring, and you'll be able to find them much more easily. So back to the PowerPoint.
Hey, Paul.
Again, we provide end user analytics for ITSM security. Yep, I know we're short on time, so I will finish in just one moment here.
No, you're doing great. Yes, we are short on time, but we actually had a couple great questions come in from the audience, and I was hoping that you could answer these very quickly, since I imagine some other folks out there on the webinar might have the same questions. So 2 questions for you. One from Rommel. Apologies, Rommel, if I mispronounced your name. But Rommel is asking, does Nextink have its own discovery tool?
Yes, and I wouldn't call it a discovery tool, but we do discover everything that's out there. In other words, we have this, again, this very small collector. It's a passive device driver, and most people deploy it as part of a group policy object. So if somebody's connecting on your network or doing whatever, then they get this. And then it's completely transparent. It takes no CPU. It's running at an elevated IPL. People can't, work around it. And as I said, it sees every binary execution, every network connection. And so from all this real-time information that comes in, Nextink then pulls all that information together to give you those different types of views. So yes, we can discover everything. You can do portfolio rationalization really easily because not only do you know like what's out there, but are they using it? When they're using it. Are they using it effectively, or is it a problem for them? You know which versions people are using, and the funny thing that I'll tell everyone, which I'm sure you know, is the best running software in your environment is running on the fewest endpoints. because those are the people who maybe complain. You fix them, you take care of it. But with DevOps and all the software that's being rolled out all the time, we end up seeing people struggle with, older versions of Java, incompatible subversions of browsers, and so forth.
Great. Thanks, Paul. And
Sure.
for any questions that you're looking for a little more in-depth of an answer, feel free to follow up with us after the webinar. And I wanted to get to this question real quick too, Paul. Murtaza is asking if they can search for applications using the NextThink tool.
Yes, you can search for applications as well as the binaries that make up those applications and executables, and then packages as well. So we capture all that information and we associate them together automatically, including all the subversions.
Great. Thanks, Paul. I'll
Sure.
keep running with it.
Okay, just a couple more slides and then we'll pass it over to Phil. So again, how do we help IT? How do the analytics help IT organizations? We talked a lot about the service desk. Again, if you have all this information, you can do a much better job of planning your transformation projects. This can really help you get on the same page when people are rolling stuff out, because again, we're getting you within minutes, a couple of minutes, the state of your entire organization at any particular point in time. NextThink acts almost like gives you a real-time view, but acts like a DVR, so you can see at any point in time what was the state of my endpoint infrastructure and the interaction with the services. And for operations, it can help you identify who's impacted, for how long they're impacted, are VIPs impacted. This is relevant information that you and the IT operations group, as well as security compliance and endpoint threat detection. Again, we do these behavioral analytics on the device and how it's acting, as well as how end users are acting. I mentioned or showed quickly the ServiceNow integration. It's available on the store. Again, trust me, on any of these topics we could spend a whole day. But the soundbite for you is that we can help you with incident management. You saw examples of that, but the real big thing for you is this proactive problem management. Everybody I talk to says it's really hard to do because they don't have enough context. So having this information, basically having the information in ServiceNow, and then being able to correlate that with everything that's going on in your infrastructure. Think of like the incidents breadcrumbing, giving you enough information to now do an investigation and say, okay, 10 users have called, 1,000 users have called, to report this issue, but how often is it happening? Where is it happening? Where is the likely cause of this? Is it on the endpoint? Is it at the network layer? Is it the service layer? And then also, a lot of the reporting and a lot of the information that we provide can easily fit into ServiceNow for your IT governance and risk and compliance requirements and so forth. So, are people using the stuff? Is it working well for them? So, in conclusion, we can help you absolutely move from a reactive to kind of a proactive, as well as kind of a model where you anticipate. And the idea is that you can do this continuous improvement and also get a kind of a continual ROI. That was one of the big findings out of this, is that once you start to get proactive, once you start to reduce the incidents, now you can start to move the resources to the projects that make the most difference for the company. So with that, Phil, why don't you talk about the Bungay case study and your experience with them?
Thank you, Paul. Just to make sure everyone can hear me okay?
Yep, all good, Phil.
Mike, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, great, perfect. Yeah, no, as Paul said, I'm just going to take a brief 5-minute overview of the Bungay case study. I'm not going to touch upon what Bungay are. For those interested, they can go out and research themselves. In essence, they're a multinational organization, presence in around 40 countries, with, as it says at the bottom of your screen, around 15,000 endpoints within EMEA, which is the region that we work with NextThink. The first issue and point that I want to raise is in Bungay, as many other organizations, IT is traditionally seen as a cost center. However, all revenue generating services are served by IT. So the provision of IT services are required to generate that revenue for the organization. And one of the messages that I think Paul has got across is the use of NextThink within the infrastructure now enables IT to better align its services with business priorities, and now is being seen as a business asset. So the 3 points that are highlighted below around kind of NextThink providing real-time visibility of the entire infrastructure from the end user perspective. This point really covers off the visibility. You know, as Paul's shown, you know, traditional point solutions of the server and network infrastructures can show all the lights are green. Yet under this radar, there are many individuals still suffering, either suffering out loud and raising incidents to the service desk, or suffering in silence and not. So it's really changing that model of detecting instances within the organization. You know, the visibility can also allow you to rationalize, standardize, and ensure compliance among the end users. So, for example, I know in Bungay there was 95 versions of 5 different internet browsers being used across the entire estate. This in itself can provide some challenges. Obviously, not every fix or not every issue is known around those instances, so it can be quite time-consuming to fix. What they've managed to do is rationalize and standardize the version of Internet Explorer, and that's actually reduced fix times by about 60% now across the estate. So that's a tangible benefit that the organization has seen. If we move on to the second point around providing better information to plan and manage migration projects, this in itself is a point that Louis raised, which is you can't manage what you can't see. So the NextThink, you know, you can provide the visibility into the infrastructure that allows issues to be detected and resolved before the end users were impacted or rolled back. This was used within the organization around a Windows migration project and ERP services. So I think there are some statistics in the documentation itself that says that over the past 2 years, you know, more effective management of projects similar to those has resulted in the IT spend being reduced by about 32%, which is quite a considerable number that can then be reinvested into the organization and, you know, provide a better quality of service in other areas. So the management of those projects isn't just from turning or resolving issues. So if we use a traffic light system from red to green, it's also for maintaining the quality of service. So Louis has dashboards up to make sure that the good quality service remains good. So he can then, you know, see on a daily basis that all the lights are green from end to end, rather than having a good and then a bad quality service from day to day. So the third point was touched upon as well, which is the proactive problem management or incident management, which comes into the integration with ServiceNow. So Paul, if I can ask you to move on and just poll the second question.
Yeah, great. Thanks for setting that up. So this is our final poll question for the day. So for the folks who have stayed on the webinar, we encourage you to participate. The final poll question is, how long do you think it would take to add a proactive management solution to your environment? And the available options are 0 to 3 months, 4 to 8 months, 9 to 12 months, over a year, and then I don't know. So we'll give everybody about 5 more seconds to vote. I'll do my countdown. So we'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you to everybody who voted. And here are the results. And we're pretty much all across the board here. So again, the question was, how long do you think it would take to add a proactive management solution to your environment? 23% said 0 to 3 months, 32% said 4 to 8 months, 14% said 9 to 12 months, 23% said over a year, and then 9% said I don't know. So I'll go ahead and hide those results and pass it back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And this second slide here around Bungay really highlights that third point, which is the proactive service desk, so the integration with the service management. I think the one point, and I know we're coming up to the hour, the one point that needs to be taken away from this session is, reducing incoming service desk calls by more than 30%. Okay, so that in itself is a significant reduction in incidents coming through. The point to take away from that is it doesn't have to mean a reduction in number of service desk analysts. What it can do is it can free up resource to better serve the end users. So the time that was spent on finding and resolving issues can be better spent providing a better quality of service to our end users. The integration we can discuss. I think that's on the roadmap for webinar 2. But it's a very simple web API, and it can be integrated with many service management platforms out there, as has been done before. Mike, I'm not sure if that covers everything with regards to the Bungay case study that you wanted to touch on today.
Yeah, it does. That was great. And as Phil mentioned, we are continuing the Next Thing conversation in 2 weeks on June 25th. We actually are hosting another webinar. The focus being to take a little closer look at the technical side of Next Thing, specifically around the investigations and the integration itself. So please be sure to save that date, especially if you were intrigued with what you saw today. You can find more webinar details on the fruitionpartners.com website under the events menu. And I know we are sitting at 9:59. We had a few questions come in towards the end. Unfortunately, we won't be able to answer those during the live session now, but we will be certain to follow up with you immediately following the webinar. I know there was a bunch of questions out there around, cost, licensing, other use cases, things like that. So again, we will be sure to follow up with you after the webinar. If a question comes to mind following the webinar or in the near future or whenever, take note of our contact info up on the screen right now. If you have a question for Fruition Partners, our email address is up there. If you have a question for Next Think, Mike Oleksinski's email is up there as well. I'm sure he'd be happy to take a deeper dive into this and give you a much more in-depth private demo if requested. So to close things up here, I just want to reiterate that a recording of the webinar along with a PDF of the deck will be shared with you soon. And again, if you did ask a question during the webinar, we will be sure to follow up with you afterwards. So thank you very much to Phil and Paul for sharing their expertise and insight today. The demo was great. And a big thanks to just all the folks out there who attended today. So with that said, we'll go ahead and shut down here. So thank you, enjoy your weekend, and we look forward to seeing everybody on June 25th. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.